preferably where you want to go, we don't even want the risks on our site. We want to design them away.
The goal has to be zero, right? Everybody has to go home the way they came in because that's our people are our most important asset.
At Skanska, safety isn't just a saying, it's a prerequisite for every single project. But on a busy construction site filled with heavy equipment and ever-changing conditions, what does safety mean in practice? For decades, the construction industry has focused heavily on mitigating risks, managing hazards with rules and training and protective gear. They're all essential. But today, a massive shift is underway. The goal is no longer just to manage risk, but to design it out of the process entirely. In this episode, we're exploring how safety is evolving. We'll dive into how advanced planning and new technologies, including AI, drones, and even robots, are reshaping what's possible, making sites not only safer, but more productive and efficient. To guide us through this, we're joined by two Skanska colleagues, Christian Jakobsson, here with me in the studio, Vice President for Sustainability and Environmental Health and Safety Management with Skanska Group. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jon. Nice to be here.
And on the line from North Carolina, we've got Phillip LaFave, Senior Vice President for Operations with Skanska USA Civil. Phillip, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Christian, can we start with you? Can you set the scene for us? Safety's been a major focus in the industry for decades. So why is it still such a challenge?
To be honest, that is a question that has crossed my mind several times. And I think it has several explanations. And I think a construction site is a high-risk environment, and inherently so, I think. If you go out on a normal construction site, you will see high energies almost everywhere you walk. You have the risk of drop objects, you have the working at heights, you have heavy machinery, lifting, loading, and lowering of materials. You also have pressurized systems. And I think that hasn't changed. That is almost always how it has looked like. So I think those risks we have still with us here today. It's an ever-changing environment. So normally, not normally, but quite often, if you enter a site in the morning, it might look differently when you leave in the afternoon or in the evening, which imposes quite a lot of planning on us in order to handle those risks that can emerge. We have temporary works. That is very, very common on a construction site. The human behavior that you have to battle. You have a variety in safety culture. So even if Skanska has a very high safety culture standard, if we work with someone else that doesn't have that imposes a risk to the whole system, of course. I also think that the adoption of technology is a bit slow, and it is very uneven looking out through the whole industry. And I think importantly to remember is that, if you are at the wrong place at the wrong time, you could suffer from life-changing events. And I think that is very, very important to bear with you.
Mm. We always say or we always hear that safety is a top priority. What does that mean in practice on the ground?
I think from my point of view, it doesn't come easy. And for Skanska, I think this happened decades ago. And I think at one point we took a decision to invest in safety. And I think in our case, the big shift was when we certified according to ISO 45001, which is the standardized way of working with safety. And embedded in that, we have a continuous improvement cycle. So I would say year after year after year after year, we have improved. As good as we are today was not the case looking back in the rear mirror. But I think to be more concrete, I think it's part of the business. We see it as a differentiator. We see that we win bids when we focus on safety. Another important piece that also builds culture is that leaders are visible on site. We can see, and we also measure the number of executive site safety visits that we do in all of our projects all around our markets, which is a very, very good signal that we care about these topics. I would also say that safety now is part of everyone's agenda, from the board down to the craftsman and at all all organizational levels. And there are two good examples. I mean, we start every morning with some daily hazardous analysis where we go through the work that day. We even have stretch and flex, which is, I wouldn't say unique, but we gather everyone in the morning and we do some stretching and flexing, and which is a quite fun site. It builds a culture and it builds a team building, and it's a very nice element of what we do here at Skanska. And I think it's part of the values, care for life, which is embedded in what we do, and that is also important. And just a personal reflection here is that I think I've been working with safety my whole life, but entering into Skanska, it really felt that this is a topic that everybody cares for. Everybody is dedicated and committed to safety, and you don't get that everywhere. So that's my personal reflection, at least.
Phillip, I'd like to bounce that over to you. How do you experience this focus on safety in every day?
So our days, like, that's why I laughed a little when Christian said the stretch and flex. So our day starts with a stretch and flex. It is a key component. I know it seems sometimes small, but that's your chance to see the people and see how the day is going to start and get everybody on the same page. What I would also say is, to me, safety is an investment in our people, right? So you invest in safety, you're investing in making our workplace better for our people. So when we do things like stretch and flex, like DHAs, we're looking out for the men and women that are out here doing the work every day, right? And we're trying to make sure they have the right tools in their hand. And those parts and pieces that Christian mentioned are a big part of setting our people up for success every day, so they can make good decisions and put themselves in a good place throughout the day. Because Christian's absolutely right. You can come to work here at 7 a.m. By noon, the job can look entirely different than it looked like at 7 o'clock. And we can plan every piece of our work, but the DHA, the planets, the work plans, those things put our people in a good position to make the good decisions when things start to change. So I think that's how we take some of that structure or policy and put it into action, is by putting that stuff in the hands of the people that need to make those decisions on a day-to-day basis.
We've been talking about how it's not just avoiding risk, it's designing out risk. Christian, can you talk us through, what does that mean? What's the difference between that and just sort of putting on a helmet?
Yeah, it's a good one. And I think that's also a shift that is happening now. I think for quite many years, many have been just satisfied to mitigate the risks. And we do that in a very good way as well. And we have plans for it and we have actions for it. But as we've been talking about here today, with like an ever-changing environment out on our sites, it becomes quite tough to keep track of everything and to inform everyone about the new setups and so on. So preferably, I mean, where you want to go is we don't even want the risks on our site. We want to design them away. So I think the way of solving that at Skanska, we have adopted to something called hierarchical controls, which isn't something new, and it's embedded in the ISO certificate and how you should work in order to mitigate risk and receive a better safety performance. But the biggest difference is, like, you can say that, and like that is the mindset that we have, but we've taken, I guess, a step further, and we have embedded it in our way of working. Looking back just 5 years ago, I couldn't see that clear, visible sign of us actually being in the top of this pyramid, eliminating risks. But now when I go out on sites and I visit projects, which I do quite oftenly, and I have the luxury of also seeing all our markets in my role, and I see every project I visit, every presentation contains something about, like, we did this, we eliminated that risk, we substituted that risk. So, and for us, it's about moving away from the barrier of only having personal protective equipment, which is still mandatory and we have to have it, but we want to get away from that. So, and we talk about elimination in our case, it is about the robotics, it's about drones, it's about prefabrication, off-site assembly, and that is sort of the strategy we have forward. And the beauty of this is that it really, really connects to the productivity as well, because we see a very, very strong link between safety and productivity, which also boils down to planning, because planning is the essential key when it comes to safety, to efficiency, and all of those. And I think to be even more clear, what we do is that we put the right people at the right time in early stages of the project. So having designers, people from operations, the safety professionals, and get the dialogue started. How do we create a better environment that is more productive and that is safer? Not only for the period of construction, but also afterwards, because we have maintenance. So that is sort of the key, the simple message when it comes to like how we're working.
So it's about, if there's a high risk activity there and you can achieve the same results by getting rid of the high risk activity, then you do it that way instead. Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, I can. So I think one of the best examples, or easiest one to grasp perhaps, is working at heights. So normally what you do is that you have a scaffolding. You use that, and you, first of all, you have to build that, and then you're working at heights. Then let's say there is a facade that you're building with bricks. Then you have people up there working and doing the brickwork. But then you could actually think a little bit different. And the different thought here is that, like, could we create this wall or the facade off-site? Could we transport it into the worksite? Could we have a crane that lifts it up and like that you mount it on site, and that you can work inside the building rather than outside the building? And in that case, you've saved hundreds of hours working tight, and it goes faster as well, and you have more control over the situation. So I think that is, and you have those examples everywhere, no matter what you're doing. Then, of course, it's hard to apply at every project at all the time, but that's not really the purpose. The purpose is to nudge the organization, to challenge the organization to think differently. Don't stop by mitigating the risk. Stop when you have eliminated the risk.
I'd also like us to look at how technologies are making a difference here. There's a lot of new technologies been happening over the past 5, 10, 15 years. And these are obviously having a huge impact all across the industry. Can we start, Christian, with looking at where are you seeing the biggest impact from new technologies when it comes specifically to safety?
So I think first off, what I would like to say is that like it's very exciting times right now when working in construction and working with safety, because I see, at least from my point of view, that construction is now evolving. We can also see that the global safety strategies and all the analysis and the expertise that have been put into this, we can actually see it now trickles down to the project sites. It's not just a nice thought anymore. We are actually making real difference out there, meaning less people at harm, less risks. We are quicker, faster, but in a more controlled way. And also the last piece, which is sort of the key, I would say, the new technology part. With both AI, we have the digitalization going on, and we have the robotics. And I think Phillip is the expert on that, but I think to digitalize your management system is key, because then you can actually sort of mine all the intelligence that is coming from all the observations, all the accidents that may occur. Sort of, how do we learn from it? How do we get better? And I think at Skanska we have a system used in USA called Planet, and I guess Phillip is nodding as well, so I think he will mention it. So I'll leave that to him. We have the drones. Which we are now using frequently. It's not like a new buzz thing for Skanska. It's part of everyday work. And there is plenty of examples how we use that in terms of like less fatigue at work sites, being at less risky places because we replace it with drones, the surveillance, the learning and the mapping of a site, and sort of the planning of a site, just getting that aerial footage. The robotics, a bit slow, but it's coming. That is my opinion. We have great examples at Skanska, both robotics that are laying out the floor plans in buildings, more accurate, less strange positions for people to work in, but it's a quality measure there. We have examples of robots working in elevator shafts, also reducing working at heights risk, but more accuracy and so on, which is a pretty cool thing, I would say. Also in buildings, robotics that are drilling the holes, avoiding risks when you have plumbers, electricians, the vent guys. I mean, you have one machine doing all the drilling now, so you don't have that stacked the problematics with stacked workforce. And then AI, of course, which I think is fundamental. And that we at Skanska, we have something called the Safety Sidekick, which is an excellent example of how to utilize AI. I mean, I just want to say, pass it on to Phillip as well, because I had the opportunity to visit your project a couple of weeks ago now, Alligator River Bridge, and it blew me away. So all the things that I've basically been talking about here today, I've seen it also live in the project that Phillip is running. So happy to hear your thoughts on it as well. But I'm super impressed, and you are ticking all the boxes on that.
That's a perfect opportunity to bring you in, Phillip. As I said, you're Senior Vice President for Operations with Skanska USA Civil, and you've got decades of experience on construction projects, particularly in the southeast of the USA, I understand. Now, Alligator River Bridge, it sounds fascinating. Got to start, are there alligators?
There are actually alligators here. We are in the Alligator River Wildlife Refuge. Building a 3-mile bridge, replacing one that's an older swing span. We replace it with a high-level overpass so that the marine traffic can pass underneath and the vehicle traffic can pass unimpeded over the top. But there are alligators. There are actually red wolves, black bears, quite the variety of non-work-related hazards running around out here.
I was going to say it'd be hard to plan those out, but okay. Can we start, and we'll go through some of the things that Christian's been mentioning as well. But when you arrive at work every day, what does working safely actually look like in practice?
So we spend we have a high focus on worksite logistics and setting up our site correctly in our laydown yards and our offices to allow access and people movement, such that we keep people out of the hazards, the man-machine interface, the pedestrians in a work zone. So to me, when I show up, if the delineation, which is like cones, candlesticks, walkways, those things look good, people are wearing their PPE, you can see communication between operators and people on the ground, that good communication and the good organization is what makes the groundwork for a safe site. And helps with keeping things organized. And that's really some of the most overlooked parts of a construction site is all the stuff that's not really the bridge. Those things are where we need to keep some focus to keep ourselves safe.
What would you say are the toughest challenges that you face on a site?
So access. So this is a marine job. So it's a 3-mile crossing over a river. So getting people from point A to point B is a significant task. You've got to get on a boat. You've got to get people safely on and off a crew boat. You have to look at weather conditions, ever-changing environment out here. So keeping ahead of that and providing solid access and getting people to where they need to go safely is step one for your day. And then obviously the logistics of moving things around on a river is a little bit different than on a truck or with a forklift. So a little bit more high risk when you get into the marine environments.
And you mentioned earlier on that the way the site looks in the morning is going to be different from what it looks like at lunchtime and then later on in the day. How do you cope with those sort of changing site conditions?
So we have our daily hazard analysis, which sets our guys up and gals up for that day. We tend to push that if something changes, you stop, you take 5, you look around, you address what changed, and you make an adjustment before you just keep moving. One of the things that we like to push is if it's not right, don't do it, stop, we'll reset. That is big here at Skanska, just being willing to stop for a minute and assess what you're about to do can save you from getting into one of those positions, like Christian said, of a life-changing event. Just a couple minutes to assess your situation. Sounds very simple, but sometimes it's hard to do that.
I've often heard it said, don't just walk by. You have to react. Now, Christian was talking about the approach at group, the strategy, and there's often a difference between what you have at the strategy lasts until it hits the ground. So how do you translate the strategy and concepts like the hierarchy of controls into your local operations?
So hierarchy of controls, those are some big words when you take them out here. Risk elimination, planning the risk out. Those hit the ground a little better here. I would say we spend a lot of time pushing the planning phase. So that's where Planet and even Safety Sidekick and developing work plans and finding ways to take that hazard away before it makes its way out into the field. That's really where that hierarchy of controls comes into play for us. Our first choice should always be to eliminate the risk. But there's also another piece to that. When you eliminate the risk, you make the work easier and more productive for the employee. So that risk elimination goes far beyond just, hey, we're eliminating this hazard. It makes the work more productive, makes our people more efficient. I think, like Christian mentioned, some of the robotics and things, we eliminate those soft tissue injuries. We got people. This is not an easy job, right? You're working outside in the heat, doing repetitive tasks, hard work. That if we can make it easier on our people, that's just the right thing to do, right? To eliminate that using a lot of these technologies, or eliminating the hazard, doing the precast or the pre-assembly of something in a much easier environment, and then taking that piece out and doing much more simple work in the higher hazard environment. Right?
I'd like us to go a little bit more into how these new technologies are helping. I mean, you mentioned the Safety Sidekick. For the listeners, Sidekick is Skanska's own AI, in-house AI tool, and then there are various AI agents that have been developed to help with specific tasks. And one of them is Safety Sidekick. How does it work, and what sort of difference is it making on the site?
So it provides access. So we can use it multiple different ways, John. It actually, on the site, in your hand, there's that benefit. It can be used to help develop a work plan in the office as well. I mean, it can give you the framework to start that work plan. Do we want the AI to do everything for us? I don't think we'll ever get there where it does it all. But it gives you the starting point, and it gives you the highlights to get that work plan going. Also, in the field, questions on standards, on safety manual items. We're standing right there. Myself, Ricardo is the safety manager here with me. If there's a question, we've pulled it out. Hey, what are the rules on this? Let's just check it. If there's a debate, it just puts that information in your hands. And it's just a tool that allows our people to make those real-time decisions that much easier and point them in the right direction on the spot, right?
I can imagine with a wetlands project like this, are you using drones? Are they helping with the project?
Yes. So we use the drones for all of our site mapping and logistics. So we'll take a monthly photo of our yard and make sure our delineation looks good and move areas around based on where our work's going to happen. So we do a lot of prefabrication out here where we'll pre-tie, which is also another version of hazard elimination, right? But we do a lot of pre-tying of our rebar on site. We'll prefabricate it into the shape and then we'll load it on a barge. Well, the site moves around a lot depending on what size pieces we're tying. And we use the drone to take the aerial shots of the yard and pre-plan where we're going to put our pre-tie beds and how we're going to move our pieces around. It's also used for progress. So when you're on the water, getting an aerial shot of something, we can sit down and put that in the work plan. Hey, we're going to move from this pier to this pier. We're going to work on this footing next. That drone, being able to stitch together the drone maps, I mean, that's a bit of a game changer to be able to see daily, monthly, weekly progress from a higher vantage point. It just gives you a better planning tool.
And that, of course, has a huge payoff when it comes to efficiency and productivity as well.
Yes. It makes it easier to plan your work, which pays off in the long run, right? If you have a good plan, you have the good parts and pieces, you can see what you're going to do, you can attack that work that much more efficiently.
Now, of course, the aim when it comes to safety is going to be zero incidents. We're not there, but how realistic is that as a vision? Christian?
For Skanska, at least, if I start there, we have proven time after time that we have projects that are going on for years, and we actually have 0 accidents and we have 0 fatalities. So of course that is pockets in our organization. We have quite many projects ongoing simultaneously, but I think that's a good indicator of that it actually can happen. From a group perspective, like if we're adding up all the numbers, consolidating the numbers, of course we have unwanted events still occurring in our business, but it's being pushed down. Every year is getting better and better and better. And I think talking about fatalities, which is the most horrible thing that can happen, we can also see that those numbers in the industry, but also in Skanska, have dropped dramatically. And I think all the things that we've been talking about here today is supporting that. And as you said, like is safety core in Skanska? It is, because we are relentlessly focusing on these questions, and we keep on working with it. And that's also when it comes back to continuous improvement. So a shorter answer to your question, I think absolutely that it is possible, and we have never been better positioned to actually manage that now. Of course, we need some more time to fight it or to battle it, but we are in a great position to actually do that now.
Philip, what gives you confidence that we're moving in the right direction?
The continuous improvement, the goal to always do a little bit better is something that is big here at Skanska. And I think that to be able to see that, we invest in new technologies, we invest in the robotics, we invest in the world-class planning software and iPads to put things in people's hands. To see those improvements and then to see it executed on a job and see all those parts and pieces come together shows you that we can do it. The goal has to be 0, right? It can't be anything other than that. And that is the push. It has to be 0. Everybody has to go home the way they came in, because that's our people are our most important asset, right? And a lot of this has to do with putting them in the right position. And I see us doing that with each and every step forward. It's to make things better for our employees and make things safer, and to make the work site, make it to 0. We can do it. We've seen it in certain places. We just have to keep pushing till it's everywhere, or we just continuously improve till we get there.
That's a very good point. And I think this has been one of the most important discussions we've had on the podcast. Because as you said, Philip, the most important thing is that everyone gets to go home. So with that in mind, Phillip LaFave, Christian Jakobsson, thank you both very much for being on Shaping Sustainable Places.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
As we've heard today, safety isn't just about putting on a helmet. It's about fundamentally changing the way we build. Christian and Philip have shown us that by shifting our mindset from mitigating and managing risk to actively designing it out, and by harnessing technologies like AI, drones, and robotics, we're not just making construction safer, we're also making it smarter and more productive and efficient. But at the end of the day, all these changes, all this technology, all serves one non-negotiable goal: ensuring that every single person gets to go home safely. My thanks to Christian Jakobsson and Phillip LaFave for sharing their expertise. And thank you for listening. Please follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and reach out either on the Skanska LinkedIn account or by emailing us at podcast@skanska.com. I'm John Ambrose, and this is Shaping Sustainable Places.